Why it makes sense for the Boston Red Sox to try and trade Jarren Duran this offseason.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I'm here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part, it's free. So make sure you tune in because Locked On is here for you every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the show. Almost to the end of the week, and we're almost to the middle of October, which means only a couple more weeks until things start to amp up when it comes to trading players, free agency, and teams really making moves to help solidify their rosters for 2026. Now, there's a lot of questions surrounding the Boston Red Sox. Who's going to still be on the team in 2026? Are they going to have a very different feeling roster heading into next year? Who's on the trading block? Who could leave to free agency? Who could they acquire in free agency? It's lots of fun things to discuss, and I'm going to be discussing specific players who are in jeopardy of maybe not being on the roster next year in Jarren Duran and one of their infielders, as well as Joe Ryan, the starting pitcher, and why he could be a good fit in Boston. So Jarren Duran, a name that's been brought up for truly a year and a half now for discussions about him potentially being traded. There are a lot of discussions going around about why trading Jarren Duran makes sense for the Boston Red Sox, and that is 100% true. Though Jarren Duran had a bit of a down year, especially offensively in 2025 compared to where he was at in 2024, trading him off of the Boston Red Sox makes a lot of logical sense. Now, this season, he did not have as good of a season as he had the year prior, because in 2024, he had a 285 batting average, and then he dropped to a 256 average in 2025. And he dropped an on-base percentage from a 342 on-base percentage a year ago to a 309 on-base percentage in 2025. And it ultimately led to a lower OPS and OPS plus and a decrease in overall wins above replacement compared to where he was at the year prior. So he just wasn't helping the Red Sox to win more games than a replacement player would. He had that going for him the season before. His struggles were characterized by pretty consistent slumps, particularly in the month of August, an increase in strikeout rate compared to what we had been used to seeing from him, and a high chase percentage of pitches outside the strike zone, despite still hitting the ball hard. So due to this regression, he ended up being viewed as the Boston Red Sox outfielder most likely to be traded at the 2025 trade deadline. But then the Red Sox decided not to trade people, and a lot of that had to do primarily with Craig Breslow not wanting to break up the chemistry that the 2025 team had. So he chose not to move any of the outfielders, but it was looking likely that he was going to be somebody who was going to get moved at that point. But now that he hasn't, he's looking like a likely candidate to be traded this offseason. His OPS plus in 2025 went from an all-star level 131 in 2024 to an 88. So that's a significant drop. He had a strong July, but then he struggled in August, which was a pattern that was also observed early in the 2024 season, but was a little bit more evident in 2025 because he did have some inconsistencies in 2024 and periods of struggle, but it wasn't as frequent as it was this season. In terms of his hitting approach, his high 34.5% chase percentage contributed to his struggles and manager Alex Cora noted that he was chasing pitches down in the zone. So a 30.5% chase percentage is higher than what we have been used to seeing from him, usually smarter at bats in the past. And despite his struggles, he did continue to hit the ball hard with high average exit velocity and bat speed, suggesting a disconnect between his hard contact and offensive results. So likely the Red Sox are going to try to shop him this offseason. I mean, him demonstrating less selectivity at the plate is something that could be fixed. He just needs to be a little bit more disciplined at the plate, and he could improve some of those numbers offensively, because it, as a direct result, would likely lead to less strikeouts if he's not chasing as much. So all of that encompasses the fact that he could improve in that area. But the reality of the situation is that what he provided to the Red Sox in 2025 wasn't enough to where it justifies saying he's a necessity for the team in 2026. And there's a huge difference between saying he was so bad this year and saying he wasn't terrible this year, but he just wouldn't really be a fit in 2026 for a team that's trying to go to the World Series. They're two very different things. And in this situation, it's more the latter. And why could the Red Sox try to trade Jarren Duran, and why could they get traction on that? Because even though he struggled a little bit and regressed at the plate in 2025 compared to 2024, he's still such a versatile player that you can't really take away from him, because he still portrays a lot of speed, which benefits him a lot on the base paths in terms of his ability to steal bases and keep opposing pitchers on their toes. And he also utilizes that speed in the outfield, where he can cover a lot of ground to make plays. Now, we did have his fair share of blunders in the outfield in 2025, but it wasn't like it was incredibly frequent to the point where he was a defensive liability. If you want to see a defensive liability in the outfield, take a look at a guy like Masataka Yoshida, or even Rob Refsnyder, who has had his struggles in the outfield. Jarren Duran was not nearly at the level of being a defensive liability, but rather he was a guy who did have some blunders, but he beat out a lot of those plays and was able to make some plays that every outfielder doesn't make, because of the distance that he was able to cover in order to get to the ball that not everybody is able to do. So that's why Jarren Duran's value will always exist, regardless of if his performance at the plate isn't incredibly top tier. And there are plenty of teams out there that need more athleticism on their roster. You have some lineups that rely too much on home runs, and the Red Sox certainly are not in that group, because they didn't really have many home run heavy hitters on their roster in 2025. But what they did rely on was their ability to get on base and manufacture runs through their speed and their ability to put pressure on opposing pitchers with the base stealing and serving as threats, and being able to lay down successful sacrifice bunts that sometimes even the player laying down the bunt was also safe on. So that's an aspect of the Red Sox game that they take a lot of pride in, that they really value. So losing some of that speed to another team could hurt the Red Sox a little bit, but it could help another team out a lot that's looking to find more players that can play small ball and try to help manufacture some runs. Because Jarren Duran is always going to have value for his speed and his ability to effectively try to get into scoring position when he's on base already. And that's a valuable skill to have. And when it comes to the Red Sox, even if they do lose Jarren Duran's speed, they still have a lot of speed on the roster. Cedar Rafaela is fast. Trevor Story, assuming he opts into the rest of his contract with the Red Sox, also fast. Then you have some of these other players like Nate Eaton and David Hamilton, who got exposure to the team more this year because of the injuries that the Red Sox faced. They also have speed. So the Red Sox would still have speed on the roster. It would just lead to them having to approach their offense a little bit differently and come up with a different scheming mechanism in order to get these guys on base and scoring runs and maximize what the offense can do. Because with Jarren Duran, the Red Sox offense was truly heavily based on trying to get him on base and get him into scoring position so somebody could drive him in, and manufacturing those scores, as opposed to relying on somebody to go deep and hit a 2-run homer to drive him in. Now you're trying to get him to second base and hoping that maybe the next batter, if he grounds out, that it's an overthrow and Duran can come all the way home on it. Because if it's a ground out and then they throw to first, Duran would still get to third, but he's fast enough to where if it was an overthrow, he could easily get home, or a weak base hit that somehow gets through, but he can score on that too. So he can create runs for a team, and that's why he could be somebody that will be probably in trade conversations. And it makes sense for the Red Sox also because they do have an overpacked outfield right now, and they're going to need to make space for Roman Anthony to come back because they were able to get away with the outfield situation they had when he got hurt since he couldn't play anymore. But because he's hopefully going to come back healthy to start the 2026 season, they need to be able to incorporate him into their scheme on offense and be able to create an everyday role for him. So therefore, trading one of their outfielders to try to get another piece of need in return makes a lot of sense. And Duran is the outfielder that makes sense to trade the most because he has the least amount of defensive upside of the other outfielders that they have on this team right now. And he can be sold because of his versatility and the fact that he does more for a team and can provide more than just his bat. He's not a one-dimensional player. He's really a five-tool player. And even though his offensive productivity decreased a little bit going into 2025, teams have other needs too. And if they're looking for somebody even to serve as a pinch runner late in games, or to be somebody who could hit in the bottom of the lineup to provide some speed there, there's definitely teams out there that would go for that. So Jarren Duran is definitely a piece that the Red Sox should be looking to trade 100% this offseason. There's no question about the fact that their outfield is probably going to look a lot different heading into this upcoming season. It kind of has to if they want to be able to make the moves to get the right pieces in place. But from a logical standpoint and where they are at right now, if they're prioritizing having strong defense in the outfield, Duran would be the one that makes the most sense for them to move on from. And coming up, another surprising player that may be on the trade block this offseason. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. That's exactly where Rugiet's Go Long comes in. This just isn't another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure to use our code so they know that we sent you. The offseason for the Boston Red Sox is here, and there are lots of question marks surrounding how they're going to exactly handle this offseason. Are they going to make a lot of aggressive moves? They better, because they are going to have to if they want to be a true World Series contender. There are lots of good teams around them, and other teams in their division continue to get better as well. You have the Blue Jays and Yankees who both won 94 games in 2025. If the Red Sox want to be up there with those teams, they need to make some more moves. Now, going into the 2025 season, I'm not sure that Craig Breslow in the front office really were 100% confident in this Red Sox team making a deep run, and they ended up still going to the playoffs. So now they were being able to get a sense of what this team can actually do with its young core. But now it's about making drastic moves to add to that young core to put them in a better position to succeed and go deep into October. And sometimes that means making hard decisions, kind of like when they traded Rafael Devers, because they felt like from a team chemistry standpoint, it was better off in the long run for the team if Devers was no longer a part of the team. So there might be some tough decisions this offseason that have to be made. Jarren Duran could end up being traded, but another player that could end up getting traded or even at least thought about in conversation is infielder Marcelo Meyer. Now, this one might feel really weird because the Red Sox have always valued that big three of Christian Campbell, Marcelo Meyer, and Roman Anthony. They had said they were going to build around those players, and that still seems to remain a goal overall. But would the Red Sox be willing to part ways with one of those players if it meant getting a number 2 starting pitcher back? And the answer most likely is yes, but definitely not to Roman Anthony. He's definitely off limits. It would be really difficult to trade Christian Campbell right now since he spent most of the season in AAA. After he had a big April, after he started the season on the major league roster, he then got sent back down and spent the rest of the season with the Worcester Red Sox. So he doesn't really have the type of value right now to warrant a trade like that. Marcelo Meyer also, to an extent, doesn't really, but he also does because he was called up partway through the season due to injury, and the Red Sox needed another infielder. So he made his major league debut, and he was able to make a quick impact, especially defensively, because he was playing third base early on because Alex Bregman was injured, and he was able to really show off his defense and how effective that was at third base. And then Alex Bregman returned from injury, so they moved Meyer to second base, where he made that transition seamlessly, and he was able to show off his defense there. Because I had spoken with Woo Sox manager Chad Tracy at one point, and he was talking about how they were going to continue to rotate Marcelo through playing second base, shortstop, and third base. And they wanted him to get reps in all of those. And it ended up paying dividends because when he got called up, he was playing really sound defense in both third base and second base, even though he didn't get to play shortstop at all in the majors because that's where Trevor Story was playing. So his defense definitely provides him a lot of value. There are still things at the plate he needs to work on, especially against left-handed pitchers, but that will come over time. So it might be premature to try to move him in a trade. But there are a couple concerns with Meyer, his injury history being one of them. I mean, he's a guy who over the last 2 seasons has ended up having season-ending injuries. Obviously not his fault, but something that needs to be considered and kept in mind when thinking about the 2026 roster is, do we trust that Marcelo is going to be able to stay healthy? The problem with that is that I'm sure other teams might have that same concern if they've also been paying attention to Marcelo throughout the course of this season. That's definitely probably something that's triggering in their heads of, well, it might not make sense for us to trade for a guy like that if he can't really stay on the field. So that could be a reason why the Red Sox have a hard time trading him, but it wouldn't be just him that gets moved. If he had played all season and he had really made a splash similar to what Roman Anthony did, both defensively and offensively, then he alone would probably be good enough to trade for a number 2 starting pitcher. But the problem is because he was hurt and missed the last part of the season due to injury, and he didn't really get to showcase quite enough yet at the major league level, teams would be hesitant to just move on from a guaranteed number 2 starting pitcher for just Marcelo Meyer. So the Red Sox would have to throw another piece in there. And when it comes to Meyer, really try to sell other teams on his skills. So the thing with Marcelo is that he's only 22 years old, and he was a borderline top 10 prospect when the Red Sox called him up in late May. So if he ever gets to a point where he can stay healthy, he could become a star for the Twins to build around. And for a Twins team that really didn't have a good season this year and missed the playoffs, their focus for 2026 probably is more to acquire young talent that they can build around rather than trying to retain their top tier talent that won't really do much for them right now because they're just not a roster that right now is built to be able to succeed later on in the season when you're going deep and you're playing really tough teams or making any sort of serious run in the playoffs. So that's just not where their roster is at right now. So they right now are probably open to acquiring some young, talented players that they can build around. But again, the injury history might make them a little bit hesitant on Meyer. As talented as Meyer is, it's hard to imagine the Red Sox not even considering moving him. I know there is a strong chance that they would say they want him to be a part of their future, which rightfully so. I wouldn't blame them for feeling that way and feeling like they want him to be one of those players that they continue to build around because they've always seen the potential there. He was a steal by the Red Sox when he got drafted. He had dropped down to the 4th pick, and the fact that he was still available was shocking to people. So the Red Sox jumped on it and grabbed him then. And ever since then, he has really worked his way up within the Red Sox system. And he's been a guy that the Red Sox definitely have enjoyed seeing and the growth that he's shown. And they definitely have made it clear that he was one of the players that the Red Sox do kind of see as part of their future. However, with a team that's trying to make a serious World Series push, you kind of have to be willing to start parting ways with guys. And Marcelo Meyer is a big enough name, a successful enough of a player to where if you're another team and you're working on formulating a foundation for the future for your team and you're looking for young players to be able to build around, Marcelo is an easy sell due to the upside in his game and what he showed in his time in the majors. So because of the fact that the injuries have kept him sidelined for a lot of 2024 and some of 2025, it could lower the value that a team is willing to offer for a guy like him, which is definitely something that the Red Sox are going to have to keep in mind when it comes to trying to move him at the trade deadline. And one team that could be an interesting fit is the Twins. And I brought them up because of the fact that Joe Ryan is a starting pitcher that the Red Sox tried to make a late push for at the trade deadline, and it ended up falling through. I know the Twins asked for Peyton Tolley, which at the time was the Red Sox #1 pitching prospect. Now he's no longer a prospect since he's been called up and has pitched in the majors. But the Red Sox weren't ready at that point to part ways with him. And it sounded like what the Twins were asking for at the time was too much for the Red Sox. So they said no, and the deal didn't get done. But now in the offseason, they could work out a trade because first of all, there's a little bit more time for it and less pressure. And teams know that teams are desperate at the trade deadline. So they're usually asking for more in return because they know that they can leverage that situation if a team is desperate to grab somebody as a rental for the last couple months to try to help them win a championship. Whereas in the offseason, every team's kind of navigating through, okay, what do we need to do to improve this team this offseason? There isn't as much of a pressing timeline of I need to get this player tomorrow so that they can help us down the stretch because that's the deadline. You do have time to make those kinds of negotiations with teams, so players could be a little bit cheaper. So if the Red Sox were to go to the Twins in the offseason and present Jarren Duran and Marcelo Meyer, 2 young players with upside for Joe Ryan, that could be something that intrigues the Twins enough to say, yeah, let's do it. So it's definitely something to consider. Big loss for the Red Sox and tough to part ways with those guys, especially Meyer. But if it gets you Joe Ryan in return, I'm doing it. Why? Because Joe Ryan would be a great fit for the Red Sox, and I'm going to be talking about him a little bit next. If you're looking for last minute tickets to any sporting event, concert, comedy show, or live event, you name it, Game Time is the best place to get your tickets. It's an app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. What is going to happen this offseason when it comes to the Boston Red Sox? That is a big question that everybody's asking. This is a team that people want to see make a deep playoff run. And unfortunately, they didn't make a deep playoff run this year. They made it to the playoffs, which is definitely an accomplishment compared to what we've seen the last few years. But now it's time to grow on that even more and put this team in a position to make an even deeper run. And part of that involves making tough decisions on players and maybe trading guys that you might not have in the past wanted to trade. Jarren Duran and Marcelo Meyer are two names that pop into my head that could be guys you could trade in a trade for Joe Ryan to become your number 2 starting pitcher. And if the Twins also ask for a prospect, I'm definitely throwing a prospect in there as well if it means getting Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan would be a great fit for the Boston Red Sox. Why? Because he's truly solidified himself as a high-end starting pitcher. He had a career best season in 2025 to really truly solidify him as a number 2 caliber hurler. He also has 2 years remaining on his contract, providing team control through the 2028 season, which is a key trait that the Red Sox do prefer. They have always mentioned that they're looking for guys that aren't going to reach free agency right away. So that's another plus to this, is they would have him for a little bit if they were to trade for him, and then they could try to extend him at that point too. He would also slot in perfectly behind Garrett Crochet to form a potent 1-2 punch. Imagine Crochet and Ryan as your 1-2. That would instantly make your rotation a lot better. Then you're not relying on Brayan Bello to be anything more than a 3. And I truly do think he is a solid 3 based on how he performed this season. The month of September was tough for him and he struggled for sure. But before that, he put together a really nice season to the point where he truly is a number 3. So if you have Garrett Crochet, Joe Ryan, and Brayan Bello as your 1, 2, 3, then the 4 or 5 is icing on the cake. Then you can work with some of these young starting pitchers that got some exposure to the majors this year, and you can try to slot them in and see where it makes sense to put them and who it makes sense to slot into the rotation moving forward. So it makes a lot of sense being able to slot Joe Ryan into that mix. Offensive depth as well. Because the Red Sox strong lineup and surplus of outfielders make them a good trade partner for the Twins, this could work out because the Twins do need to replenish their farm system right now. So the Red Sox do have pieces that they could offer in order to make this work, particularly like I mentioned with Duran and Meyer, but they could put together other creative packages, but it could be a partnership that could help both teams this offseason because of the needs of where both teams are at and the fact that the Red Sox do have a lot that they could offer to Minnesota to make this happen. The Red Sox did make a late push at the trade deadline, but at the time, they weren't willing to move Jarren Duran or Willie Abreu, which were both players that the Twins were interested in at the time. But Craig Breslow didn't want to break up the chemistry that the team had then, so he said no. But now that the season's over, now is the time to ruffle feathers and change around the roster a little bit before these guys go into spring training and start formulating their chemistry for 2026. So I'm sure Breslow would be more open to that now. And the fact that the Twins were knowingly interested in Duran, the Red Sox could definitely use that to their advantage, because if they were to bring his name up again, the Twins might be like, wow, yes, let's do it. The Red Sox were just unwilling to offer a substantial enough package at the deadline, including their top tier prospects, to acquire him. But I think Craig Breslow learned his lesson when he made that desperation move to acquire Dustin May at the deadline, because he felt like he needed to acquire somebody. Now he knows you have to be more aggressive when it comes to being willing to move players to get a guy like Joe Ryan. And now he has a general sense of what the Twins are thinking as what a package could look like that's appropriate for them to give back Ryan. So Breslow can at least be prepared for that and come to them with a package that makes sense for them too. So this would be an ultimate high commitment move for a Red Sox team looking to contend. If they were to acquire Joe Ryan, it would send a clear message that they are not messing around. They are trying to pursue the best players available on the market to give themselves the best chance that they possibly can to compete for a World Series in 2026. This would be a huge move and a statement move, but it's the type of move that needs to happen in order for the Red Sox to compete next year and beyond. They need to get a little bit uncomfortable, and this is where you get uncomfortable. You make that trade all day, every day. Because of his performance Ryan will likely face significant competition on the offseason trade market. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is that the Red Sox are definitely not going to be the only teams in the mix, but they can be the best team in the mix if they utilize their resources. There's a reason why people keep talking about the Red Sox farm system being deep and their ability to move guys around. It's because they do have that strong of a system and they have the ability to offer guys to get who they want in return. So at this point, they cannot be afraid to move players to get a guy like Joe Ryan, who could be a true number 2 starter in the rotation to go behind Garrett Crochet. So all of that being said, go out and make some moves this offseason, and let's hope that the Red Sox make good ones. Thank you for always making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I truly do appreciate it. It means so much to me. For your second listen, make sure to check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's a great show. I promise you'll enjoy listening to it after this. Keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.